My father publicly humiliated my 8-year-old son at a family dinner, declaring him a future failure compared to my niece. He didn't realize I was secretly funding his golden granddaughter's entire education. So, I cut the checks immediately, and their world crumbled. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The breadsticks were cold. That was the first thing I noticed, though my mind was racing too fast to truly care about the culinary failings of Le Jardin. I was vibrating with a specific kind of exhaustion, the kind that settles deep in your bones after a 60-hour work week, only to be dragged out to a mandatory family celebration on a Sunday night. I looked across the table at my son, Ethan. At 8 years old, he was already shrinking in on himself, his small shoulders hunched up toward his ears as if he were trying to disappear inside his polo shirt. He was pushing a single green bean around his plate with a fork, his eyes fixed intently on the vegetable to avoid making eye contact with anyone. He hated these dinners. To be honest, so did I, but obligation is a heavy chain, and my father, Stephen, was an expert at yanking it. "Abigail, you haven't touched your wine," my sister, Sarah, chirped from across the table. She was glowing, flushed with the wine she'd been drinking freely since we sat down. Next to her sat Bella, my 10-year-old niece. Bella was dressed in her pristine school uniform, the crest of St. Jude's Academy emblazoned on the blazer she had insisted on wearing to dinner. "I'm driving, Sarah," I said, my voice sounding more tired than I intended. "And I have an early meeting tomorrow." Always the grind," Stephen boomed from the head of the table. He was a large man, taking up space not just physically, but atmospherically. When Stephen was in a room, the air grew thinner for everyone else. He swirled his glass of Cabernet, looking around the restaurant with a performative air of satisfaction. "We are here to celebrate, Abigail. Try to look like you're part of this family for once." The celebration was for Bella's report card. She had achieved straight A's. Again. A feat that Stephen had been extolling for the last 45 minutes, dissecting every grade, every teacher's comment, as if he were reading a Nobel Prize citation. "Now," Stephen said, tapping his knife against his glass. The sharp ding, ding, ding cut through the ambient chatter of the restaurant. He stood up, clearing his throat. "I want to propose a toast." I reached under the table and squeezed Ethan's hand. He flinched, then squeezed back, his palms sweaty. "To Bella," Stephen began, his voice projecting so that neighboring tables would be forced to listen. "For showing us what excellence looks like. You know, in this family, we value legacy. We value the future." He paused, his gaze drifting from the beaming Bella to me, and then, with a distinct drop in warmth, to Ethan. Ethan wasn't looking up. He was staring at a small Lego figure he had snuck into the restaurant, hiding it in his lap. He was a quiet boy, brilliant in his own way, obsessed with mechanics and how things worked. But he struggled with reading, and he certainly didn't care about grades in the way my father demanded. "It is a comfort," Stephen continued, his voice taking on a sneering, conspiratorial tone, "to know that at least one of my grandchildren has the drive to succeed." The table went silent. Sarah covered her mouth, giggling slightly, a sound that grated on my nerves like sandpaper. Stephen wasn't finished. He leaned forward, bracing his hands on the white tablecloth, looking directly at Ethan, who was still looking down. "Your niece," Stephen announced, gesturing grandly at Bella, "is the only one who will make something of herself. She has the spark, not like your boy." Time seemed to freeze. I felt the blood drain from my face, replaced instantly by a flush of white-hot rage. "He's always in the clouds," Stephen went on, chuckling as if he were sharing a harmless joke. "Fiddling with toys, no ambition, a dreamer. The world eats dreamers, Abigail. Bella is a shark. Ethan, well, let's just hope he marries rich, eh?" And then the worst thing happened. Everyone laughed. Sarah laughed, a high, tinkling sound. Bella giggled, mimicking her mother. Even Stephen's new wife, who barely knew us, let out a polite chuckle. But Ethan didn't laugh. He stopped moving his fork. He slowly lifted his head, and I saw the moisture gathering in his wide, brown eyes. He understood. He heard every word. He heard his grandfather, the patriarch, dismiss his entire existence as a punchline. He looked at me, his chin trembling, begging me silently to make it stop. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap like a breaking branch. It was the quiet, metallic click of a safety being disengaged. I didn't yell, I didn't flip the table. I sat up very straight, picked up my napkin, and dabbed the corners of my mouth. "That's an interesting perspective, Dad," I said. My voice was calm, deadly calm. It cut through their laughter like a razor blade. The laughter died down. Stephen looked at me, a smirk still playing on his lips. "It's just the truth, Abby. Don't be so sensitive. The boy needs to toughen up." "Excellence requires support," I said, locking eyes with him. "And investment, doesn't it?" "Exactly," Stephen beamed, thinking I was agreeing with him. "And Sarah has done a marvelous job raising Bella to appreciate that investment." I turned my gaze to Sarah. Her smile faltered slightly under my stare. "Sarah," I said, keeping my voice level, "Bella's tuition at St. Jude's is due next week, isn't it? For the upcoming semester." Sarah blinked, confused by the sudden pivot. Yes, why?" "And the fees for her horseback riding, and the advanced French tutor." "Yes, Abigail," Sarah snapped, annoyed. "What is your point?" I looked back at my father. "You think Bella is the only one with a future, the only one worth betting on." "Clearly," Stephen scoffed. "Cool," I said. I picked up my purse and slung it over my shoulder. "Then I'm sure you won't mind if I stop paying for it." The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavy, suffocating, and instant. Sarah froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "What?" "The $3,000 a month for St. Jude's," I said, enunciating every syllable. "The riding lessons, the tutors, all of it. Since Ethan is such a poor investment, and I'm just his mother, I think I should focus my finances on him. Maybe save up for that rich wife he's going to need." I stood up, taking Ethan's hand. "Come on, honey, we're leaving." "Abigail, sit down," Stephen hissed, his face turning a mottled shade of red. He gripped my arm, his fingers digging into my bicep. "You are making a scene. Please, not here." I looked at his hand on my arm, then up at his face. I didn't pull away. I just smiled, a cold, humorless smile that didn't reach my eyes. "The betrayal wasn't the insult, Dad," I whispered, leaning in close so only he could hear. "The betrayal was thinking I would keep funding your fantasy while you destroyed my reality." The walk to the car was a blur of neon streetlights and the rhythmic clicking of my heels on the pavement. I was moving fast, my hand gripping Ethan's small, warm hand so tightly I had to consciously remind myself to relax my fingers. He was practically jogging to keep up with me, his head down, the Lego figure clutched to his chest like a talisman. We reached my SUV, and I unlocked it with a beep that sounded too loud in the quiet parking lot. I buckled Ethan into the back seat, checking the straps with trembling hands. "Mom," his voice was small, barely a whisper. I paused, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. My heart was breaking for him, shattering into a million jagged pieces. "Yes, baby." "Is Grandpa right?" he asked. He didn't look at me, he was staring at the buckle. Am I not going to be anything?" The air left my lungs. I knelt there on the asphalt, ignoring the grime ruining my dress slacks. I took his face in my hands, forcing him to look at me. "Ethan, look at me. Listen closely," I said, my voice fierce. "Grandpa is wrong. He is wrong about everything. You are smart and you are kind and you are creative. You see things other people miss. That is a superpower, not a weakness." "But everyone laughed," he whispered, a tear finally escaping and tracking down his cheek. "They laughed because they are foolish," I said, wiping the tear away with my thumb, "and because they don't know what's coming." I closed the door and climbed into the driver's seat. As I merged onto the highway, the adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a cold, calculating clarity. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. The silence in the car was heavy, filled with the things we weren't saying. My phone, sitting in the cup holder, lit up. Then it buzzed. Then it lit up again. Incoming call, Sarah. I ignored it. Incoming call, Dad. I ignored it. Incoming call, Sarah. They were panicking. Good. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Ethan had fallen asleep, his head lolling against the window, exhausted by the emotional trauma of the evening. Seeing him like that, vulnerable and hurt, hardened my resolve into something unbreakable. They thought this was just a tantrum. They thought I had just thrown out a threat in the heat of the moment to save face. They thought that tomorrow I would calm down, apologize for ruining the dinner, and write the check for St. Jude's just like I always did. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. I wasn't just the bank they treated me as, I was a senior financial consultant. My entire career was Bill T on risk assessment, leverage, and reading the fine print. And for the last 5 years, while they were busy spending my money and mocking my life, I had been meticulous with my record keeping. I didn't just pay the bills, I controlled the flow. The phone buzzed again. This time, a voicemail notification popped up. I tapped the speaker button, keeping my eyes on the road. Sarah's voice filled the car, shrill and panicked. Abigail, are you serious? You can't just leave like that. Bella is crying, Dad is furious. You need to come back and apologize right now. And, look, about the tuition. The semester starts in 2 weeks. You can't joke about that. You know Steven doesn't have that kind of liquidity right now. Call me back. Immediately. I let out a short, dry laugh. She wasn't worried about Ethan. She wasn't calling to apologize for laughing at her nephew. She was calling because the ATM had just swallowed her card. Liquidity, I muttered to myself. You have no idea, Sarah. I signaled to exit the highway. I wasn't going to just stop the payments. That was too simple. That was reactive. I had to be proactive. I had to dismantle the entire house of cards they had built on my back. I pulled into our driveway, the headlights sweeping across the modest, comfortable home I had bought with my own money. No help from Steven, no handouts. As I carried a sleeping Ethan inside, I remembered the folder in my home office. The blue folder. The one labeled Family Trusts and Beneficiaries. Steven had always boasted about the family estate, about the inheritance that would one day secure the family line. He used it as a carrot to dangle in front of us, keeping us compliant. But because I handled the taxes, I knew the truth about the estate. They weren't just dependent on my monthly checks for tuition. They were dependent on me for survival. And tonight, the survival instinct had finally kicked in, not for me, but for my son. To understand why tonight happened, you have to understand Steven. My father wasn't a man, he was a brand manager. His product was the perfect family, and he was the CEO. In his eyes, appearances were the only currency that mattered. If you looked successful, you were successful. If you looked rich, the money would follow. Growing up, Sarah was the perfect product. She was blonde, bubbly, and average in every way that mattered to him. She didn't challenge him. She smiled for photos, and she married a man who looked good in a suit but couldn't hold down a job. I was the defect. I was too opinionated, too dark, too focused on books and numbers. I didn't marry the man Steven picked out for me. Instead, I focused on my career. I built a reputation in the city as a financial shark. I made partner at my firm by 32. And yet, in Steven's narrative, I was the unlucky one, the single mother, the one who worked too hard, the one who couldn't keep a husband. When Sarah's husband left her 3 years ago, leaving her with Bella and 0 assets, Steven didn't step up. He couldn't. He was asset-rich and cash-poor, which in finance speak often means living on credit and delusional hope. He had come to me one rainy Tuesday night, sitting in my kitchen, drinking my coffee. Abigail, he had said, using his soft, manipulative voice. Sarah is fragile. Bella is brilliant. We can't let Bella suffer because her father is a deadbeat. St. Jude's is her future. It's the family legacy. I would pay it myself, I would, but my capital is tied up in the development project. Just for a few months. until things liquidate. A few months turned into 3 years. I paid because I loved Bella. She was a sweet kid before Stephen and Sarah got their claws into her ego. I paid because I wanted my father's approval, pathetic as that sounds. I paid because it was easier to write a check than to deal with the guilt trips. But the antagonist of my life wasn't just my father's narcissism. It was his active malice toward my son. Stephen couldn't control Ethan. Ethan didn't care about the brand. Ethan didn't smile on command. Ethan was autistic, high-functioning but distinct. He didn't play the game. And to Stephen, anything he couldn't control was a threat. So he began the campaign. Small comments at first. "He's a bit slow, isn't he? Why doesn't he look me in the eye? Maybe he belongs in a special school." I absorbed it all, making excuses, trying to keep the peace. I was the buffer. But tonight, the buffer had disintegrated. I sat at my desk, opening the blue folder. Inside were the bank statements I had access to, not mine, but theirs. Because I managed the family portfolio, a glorified pile of debt and bad investments, I had power of attorney on several accounts to move money for them. I looked at the transactions. While I was paying $3,000 a month for tuition, plus another $1,500 for expenses for Sarah had been busy. Nordstrom, $400. Spa de la Mer, $250. Jardin deposit for tonight's dinner, $500. I stared at the paper. They had used my money to pay for the dinner where they humiliated my son. The audacity was breathtaking. It was almost impressive in its sociopathy. My phone buzzed again, a text from Stephen. "Stop this nonsense immediately. You are embarrassing the family. We need to discuss the tuition payment schedule. It's due on the 1st. Don't punish Bella for your insecurity." My insecurity. I looked at the photo of Ethan on my desk. He was holding a robot he had built from scratch, smiling that rare, genuine smile that lit up the room. I wasn't insecure, I was furious. I pulled up my email and drafted a message to the bursar at St. Jude's Academy. I didn't send it yet. I needed to be smarter than that. I needed to investigate exactly how deep their financial rot went. If Stephen was desperate enough to grab my arm in a restaurant over a tuition threat, it meant he wasn't just illiquid. It meant he was drowning. And I was the lifeguard who had just decided to go on break. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in a while. It was late, but I knew he would be up. "Marcus," I said when the voice answered. Marcus was a forensic accountant I worked with on high-stakes divorce cases. "I have a job for you. It's personal. I need you to pull everything on Stephen Miller's LLCs. I think he's hiding debt, and I need to know exactly how much." "Trouble in paradise, Abby?" Marcus asked, his voice rough with sleep but interested. "No," I said, staring at the text from my father. "Paradise is burning down. I just want to make sure I'm holding the gasoline." The morning sun was too bright, glaring through the kitchen blinds with an aggressive cheerfulness that felt entirely inappropriate. I sat at the island, nursing a black coffee that had long since gone cold, watching Ethan pack his backpack. He moved with a sluggish heaviness that wasn't natural for an 8-year-old. Usually, he would be bouncing on the balls of his feet, rambling about the structural integrity of the Death Star, or asking if we could buy a new servomotor for his robotics kit. Today, he was silent. He tucked his Lego figure deep into the side pocket of his bag, checking twice to make sure it was hidden. "Ready, bud?" I asked, forcing a lightness into my voice that I didn't feel. "Yeah," he mumbled, shouldering the bag. He didn't look at me. "Mom, do I have to go to school? Bella, she might tell people." My heart clenched. St. Jude's, where Bella went, was a private academy across town. Ethan went to a specialized public magnet school for STEM and arts. They didn't share a campus, but in the small ecosystem of our family, the fear of social contamination was real. "Bella isn't at your school, honey. And even if she was, she has no power over you. You are your own person. You are smart, Ethan. Don't let a bad dinner change what you know is true." He nodded, but the slump in his shoulders didn't disappear. I dropped him off, watching him walk into the building without looking back. That image, his small form retreating into the crowd, burdened by an insult thrown by his own grandfather, calcified the anger in my chest. It turned it from a hot, reactive rage into something cold, hard, and permanent. I drove straight to my office in the financial district. I didn't go to my desk immediately. Instead, I went to the legal department on the 14th floor to see David, a colleague who specialized in estate law. "Abigail," David said, looking up from a stack of briefs, "you look like you're on a warpath. Everything okay?" "I need to clarify the terms of the Miller family trust," I said, placing the blue folder on his desk. "Specifically, the clause regarding the removal of beneficiaries and the powers of the trustee." David raised an eyebrow. "The trust your father set up 10 years ago, I thought that was just a tax shelter for the property." "It was," I said. "He put everything in my name as the trustee because he was being sued by a contractor at the time. He wanted to hide his assets. He made me the legal owner of the deed to his house and the condo Sarah lives in to protect the legacy. He always assumed I was just a placeholder, a rubber stamp." David opened the file, scanning the dense legal jargon. He hummed, tapping a pen against his chin. "Well, according to this, you aren't just a placeholder, Abby. You have absolute discretion over the distribution of assets. And since the properties are technically assets of the trust, and you are the sole trustee, I can evict them," I finished, the realization settling over me like a suit of armor. "Theoretically, yes, you have the leverage. If he tries to fight you on financial grounds, he has to admit in court that he transferred the assets to defraud a creditor, which would open him up to criminal liability. He's checkmated himself, provided you have the stomach to pull the trigger." "I have the stomach," I said. "I have the appetite." I went back to my office and logged into my secure portal. The first thing I did was formally cancel the recurring wire transfer to St. Jude's Academy. I typed out a brief, professional email to the school's bursar. Subject: tuition payments for Isabella Miller, to whom it may concern. Please be advised that effective immediately, I will no longer be the guarantor for Isabella Miller's tuition. Any future invoices should be directed to her legal guardians, Sarah Miller and Stephen Miller. Please update your records accordingly. I hit send. It felt like cutting an anchor line. Then my phone rang. It was Marcus. "Abby," his voice was grim, "I've been digging through the LLCs like you asked. You need to come down to the conference room. You're not going to believe this." I took the elevator down, my heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. Marcus was spread out over a large mahogany table, surrounded by spreadsheets and printouts. "How bad is it?" I asked, closing the door behind me. "It's not just bad, it's fictional," Marcus said, spinning a laptop around to face me. "Your father's development company? It hasn't had a legitimate project in 4 years. He's been moving money between 3 different shell accounts to make it look like there's cash flow to secure loans. It's a classic kiting scheme, but that's not the kicker." "What is?" "He's been using your social security number," Marcus said quietly. I froze. "What?" "Not for credit cards," Marcus clarified quickly. "For consulting fees. He has you listed as a silent partner in one of the LLCs. He's been funneling money out of the business, listing it as payments to you to lower his tax liability, but the money never goes to you. It goes into an offshore account in the Caymans. He's using your clean credit and professional reputation to launder his embezzlement." I stared at the screen, the numbers blurred. My father wasn't just a bully, he was a criminal, and he had implicated me. If the IRS audited him, they would come for me too. "He's using me as a shield," I whispered. "He humiliates my son at dinner, but he hides behind my name on his tax returns." "Abby, if this blows up, you lose your license," Marcus said, his face serious. "You lose your career, you have to get out ahead of this. You have to report him before he drags you down." I looked at the evidence. The trap I had been looking for wasn't just the trust. It was this. He had handed me the gun, thinking I was too loyal to check if it was loaded. "Print it all," I said. "Make 3 copies." The storm didn't wait long to break. At 2:00 p.m., my receptionist buzzed me. "Abigail, your sister is here. She's distressed. She says it's an emergency." "Send her in," I said. I didn't stand up. I remained seated behind my large glass desk. The spreadsheets Marcus had given me neatly stacked to my right. The door swung open and Sarah marched in. She looked frantic. Her usually perfect hair was slightly disheveled, and she was clutching her Chanel bag, another gift I had bought her for Christmas 2 years ago, like a shield. "What is wrong with you?" she shrieked, slamming the door behind her. "The bursar just called me. They said the payment bounced. They said you canceled it." "I did," I said calmly, lacing my fingers together on the desk. "I told you last night I would." "I thought you were joking." Sarah paced the room, her heels sinking into the plush carpet. "You can't do this, Abigail. Bella has a writing competition next week. If her tuition is in arrears, she can't represent the school. Do you know how humiliating that would be? For me." "For you," I repeated. "Not for Bella, for you." "For the family," she yelled. "Dad is losing his mind. He's trying to call his contacts to move money around, but you know how liquidity is right now. You are causing chaos over a stupid joke." "A joke," I said flatly. "You laughed, Sarah. When Dad said Ethan wouldn't amount to anything, you laughed." "Oh my God, get over it." She threw her hands up. "Dad is old school. He's tough. He just wants Ethan to be stronger. He didn't mean it literally. But you are literally ruining Bella's life right now. You're jealous. That's what this is. Dad said it this morning. You're jealous that Bella is the golden child and Ethan is, well, Ethan." The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Ethan is what, Sarah?" I asked softly. "He's difficult," she snapped. "He's weird, okay? He's not effortless like Bella, and you hate that, so you're punishing us." I stood up then, slowly. I picked up a single sheet of paper from the stack Marcus had given me. "I'm not punishing you because I'm jealous," I said, my voice steady. "I'm cutting you off because the bank is closed. And Sarah, you might want to sit down." "I don't want to sit down." "Sit down," I commanded. The authority in my voice, honed by years of boardroom negotiations, made her pause. She sat on the edge of the guest chair, looking defiant but uncertain. "I did an audit this morning," I said. "Did you know that Dad has been paying your living expenses out of the Miller family trust?" "So," she scoffed, "it's family money." "It's my money," I corrected. "I am the sole contributor to that trust. Dad hasn't put a dime in since 2015, but that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is that the condo you live in, the one you think Dad bought for you." "Yes, my condo. What about it?" "He didn't buy it," I said. "The trust bought it, and I am the trustee, which means, legally, I am your landlord." Sarah blinked. "That's not true, Dad said." "Dad lied," I interrupted. "Just like he lied about having the liquidity to help you. He's broke, Sarah. He's been broke for years. He's been using my credit and my cash flow to keep up appearances. And the tuition? I stopped it not just because he insulted Ethan, but because I'm done paying for the stage you all perform on." You're lying," she whispered, her face pale. "Am I?" I slid a document across the desk. It was the deed to her condo. My signature was at the bottom as trustee. "I could evict you. I could sell that place tomorrow. I have the legal right, but I haven't done that yet. Right now, I'm just stopping the tuition." She stared at the paper, her hands trembling. Her reality was cracking. The narrative she had lived in, that she was the princess provided for by her powerful father, was dissolving. "Fix this," she hissed, looking up at me with tears in her eyes. "Fix this, Abigail. Dad will kill you." "Let him try," I said. As if summoned, my cell phone on the desk began to buzz. It was Stephen. I put it on speaker. "You ungrateful, spiteful little bitch," Stephen's voice roared into the office. Sarah flinched. "I just got off the phone with the bank. They're telling me my access to the trust account is frozen. What did you do?" "I secured the assets, Stephen," I said, using his first name. As trustee, I have a fiduciary duty to prevent embezzlement. And looking at the transaction history, $500 dinners, spa treatments, country club fees, it looks like a lot of embezzlement. I will sue you, he screamed. I will drag you through court. I made you. That is my money. It was never your money, I said. And if you want to go to court, please, let's go. I have a forensic accountant sitting in the next room who would love to explain to a judge why you've been using my social security number for tax fraud. There was a silence on the other end, a long, heavy silence. You wouldn't, he whispered. The bluster was gone, replaced by pure fear. I suggest you apologize to Ethan, I said. And then I suggest you find a way to pay for St. Jude's yourself, because the Bank of Abigail is permanently closed. I hung up. Sarah was staring at me as if I were a stranger. You really hate us, she said quietly. No, Sarah, I said, sitting back down. I just finally started loving myself and my son more than I fear him. You would think that the threat of prison for tax fraud would silence a man like Stephen. But narcissists don't operate on logic, they operate on ego preservation. When cornered, they don't surrender. They explode. The next 3 days were a war of attrition. It started with the extended family. My Aunt Linda, Stephen's sister, called me to tell me I was disgusting for abandoning my family in their time of need. My cousin sent me a Facebook message calling me a vindictive cow. Stephen had spun a new narrative. Abigail is having a mental breakdown. She's stealing our money. She's jealous of Bella. He didn't tell them about the fraud. He didn't tell them about the deed. He just played the victim. Sarah, to her credit, or perhaps her cowardice, went silent. She didn't move out of the condo, but she didn't call. I suspect she was paralyzed, caught between the father she worshipped and the sister who held the keys to her front door. But Stephen wasn't done. On Thursday, I received a courier packet at work. It was a letter from a shady lawyer Stephen used for his business deals. It was a cease and desist, demanding I unlock the trust accounts and resign as trustee, citing mental incompetence. It was laughable legally, but it was dangerous professionally. If he started spreading rumors that I was mentally incompetent, my clients would get nervous. He was trying to burn my career to the ground to force me back into line. I sat in my office, reading the letter, when Marcus walked in. He looked paler than usual. He wasn't carrying a stack of papers this time. He was holding a single red binder. Abby, he said, we need to talk now. What is it? Did he hide more debt? No, Marcus said. He sat down and opened the binder. I was tracing the initial funding for the education accounts. You know how your mom left that savings bond for the grandkids when she passed? The one that was supposed to mature when I turned 18. Yes, I said. It was $30,000 total, split between Bella and Ethan, $15,000 each. It's in a custodial account. It was in a custodial account, Marcus corrected, until 8 months ago. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Stephen forged a withdrawal authorization, Marcus said, sliding a photocopy across the table. He liquidated Ethan's portion, the entire $15,000. He claimed emergency medical expenses for the minor. I stared at the signature. It was a clumsy forgery of my own handwriting. And where did the money go? I asked, my voice barely audible. Marcus pointed to the next line on the spreadsheet. He transferred it directly to the St. Jude's Academy account. He used Ethan's inheritance to pay for Bella's tuition last semester. The world tilted on its axis. He hadn't just insulted Ethan. He hadn't just ignored him. He had stolen from him. He had taken the last gift my mother had left for her grandson, money meant for his college, for his future, for the very success Stephen claimed he would never have, and he had fed it to the golden child. He had cannibalized my son's future to polish Bella's present. I felt a physical pain in my chest, a sharp, stabbing ache of pure grief and fury. I thought I had reached my limit at the dinner table. I thought I had reached my limit with the tax fraud. But this was a declaration of war that demanded total annihilation. He stole from a child, I said. He stole from his own grandson. It's a felony, Marcus said. Wire fraud, theft, forgery. If you give this to the police, Abby, he goes to jail, not for a tax audit, for real time. I closed the binder. My hands were remarkably steady. Get the car, Marcus, I said. Where are we going? The police station. No, I said, standing up and smoothing my blazer. Sarah sent me a text earlier. They are having an emergency family meeting at Stephen's house tonight to discuss Abigail's breakdown. The aunts are there, the cousins, everyone. I picked up the red binder. I'm going to the meeting, I said, and I'm going to show them exactly what kind of man they are defending. Abby, that's a hostile environment, Marcus warned. I know, I said, walking to the door. But they have no idea what hostile really is. They think I'm just the bank. They're about to find out I'm the repo man. I drove to my childhood home, the red binder sitting on the passenger seat like a loaded weapon. The sun was setting, casting long, bloody shadows across the road. I thought about Ethan, sitting at home with his Legos, building worlds where things made sense, where pieces fit together, where the good guys won. Tonight, I was going to burn my father's world down, and I wasn't going to leave a single brick standing. The driveway of my childhood home was full. Aunt Linda's sedan was there, blocking the garage. My cousin Mark's truck was parked on the lawn, the tire tracks cutting deep into the grass Stephen prized so highly. It looked less like a family gathering and more like a siege. I parked on the street. I took a moment to breathe, the air conditioning of my car humming a low, steady note against the silence of the night. I looked at the red binder on the passenger seat. It wasn't just paper and ink, it was a demolition order. I picked it up, stepped out of the car, and walked up the path. The front door was unlocked. When I walked into the living room, the conversation stopped instantly. They were all there, a tribunal of the concerned. Stephen sat in his high-backed leather armchair like a king in exile, swirling a glass of scotch. Sarah was curled up on the sofa, looking red-eyed and anxious. Aunt Linda, a woman who thrived on other people's misery, stood by the fireplace with her arms crossed. She's here, Linda announced, her voice dripping with judgment. We were just discussing whether we needed to call a wellness check on you, Abigail. Save your minutes, Linda, I said, walking to the center of the room. I didn't sit down, I didn't take off my coat. I'm perfectly well. Are you? Stephen spoke up, his voice booming with that practiced paternal disappointment. Because cutting off your niece's education, evicting your sister, accusing your own father of what was it? Embezzlement. These are not the actions of a sane woman, Abigail. These are the actions of a hysterical, jealous daughter. Jealous, I repeated, tasting the word. That's the narrative, isn't it? That I'm jealous of Sarah, jealous of Bella. We all know you've struggled, Linda chimed in, stepping forward. Since the divorce, since Ethan's diagnosis, it's been hard on you. We forgive you, Abby, we really do. But you need to sign over the control of the trust back to your father. He knows how to manage these things. You're clearly overwhelmed. Sarah looked at me, her eyes pleading. Just sign it, Abby, please. Dad says if you sign it, he won't press charges for slander. We can go CK to normal. I looked at Sarah. I actually felt a flicker of pity for her. She truly believed that normal was a place we could ever return to. There is no normal, I said softly. There is only the truth, and I brought some of it with me. I dropped the red binder onto the coffee table. It landed with a heavy, dull thud that echoed in the quiet room. What is this? Stephen sneered, though he didn't reach for it. He knew. I could see the tightness around his eyes. He knew exactly what was in there. That, I said, pointing to the binder, is the end of the lie. Linda, since you're so concerned about the family finances, why don't you open it to the first tab? Linda hesitated, looking at Stephen. He took a sip of his drink, his hand trembling slightly. Don't indulge her insanity, Linda. Open it, I commanded. Linda reached down and flipped the cover. That is a deed transfer, I explained as she stared at the page. It shows that the Miller family estate isn't owned by Stephen Miller. It's owned by the Abigail Miller Revocable Trust. I own this house, Linda. I own the chair Dad is sitting in. I own the roof over your heads right now. That's just a technicality, Stephen blustered. For tax purposes, you know that. Flip to the second tab, I said. Linda turned the page, her eyes widened. What is this? These are tax returns. Those are my tax returns, I said. Or rather, the ones Stephen filed using my social security number without my knowledge. He's been funneling money out of his failing companies, claiming he paid me hundreds of thousands in consulting fees, and then moving that cash offshore. It's identity theft, Dad, and it's federal tax fraud. The room went dead silent. The cousins in the back shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't a family squabble anymore. This was a felony in progress. You framed me, Stephen hissed, standing up. You cooked the books. Marcus didn't cook anything, I said calmly. But here is the part that really matters, the part that explains why we are here. I looked directly at Sarah. Sarah, do you remember Mom's bonds, the ones she left for the kids? Sarah nodded slowly. The college fund, for when they turn 18. Turn to the last tab, Linda, I said. Linda flipped the pages. She gasped. It was a genuine, horrified sound. What? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. What is it? It's a withdrawal slip, I said, my voice hardening into steel. Dated 8 months ago, for $15,000 from Ethan's account. Sarah stood up. What? Dad forged my signature, I said, keeping my eyes locked on Stephen. He liquidated Ethan's entire inheritance. He stole every penny Mom left for him. No, Sarah whispered. She looked at Stephen. Dad, you said the market was down. You said the accounts were frozen. I did what I had to do, Stephen roared, slamming his glass down. The scotch splashed onto the table. Bella needed the tuition. St. Jude's is expensive. I couldn't let her get kicked out just because business was slow. So you stole from Ethan? Sarah screamed. It was the first time I had ever heard her raise her voice at him. You stole from my nephew. Ethan doesn't need it, Stephen shouted back, his face turning purple. Look at him. He's not going to college. He's going to be working at a gas station or playing with toys his whole life. Bella is the star. You don't waste resources on a lost cause, Sarah. You invest in the winner. I did it for you. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a bomb having detonated, leaving nothing but dust and ringing ears. He had said the quiet part out loud. He had admitted, in front of everyone, that he viewed my son as a lost cause worth robbing. Sarah stared at him. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at me, and for the first time in years, the mask of the golden child fell away. I saw the horror in her eyes. She realized that the investment in Bella wasn't love. It was a transaction, and the cost was her sister and her nephew. Sarah walked over to the coffee table. She looked down at the withdrawal slip. Then she looked at Stephen. You're a monster, she whispered. I'm a father who provides, Stephen yelled. I held this family together. You didn't provide anything, I said, stepping forward. You stole, you lied, and you pitted us against each other to hide your own failures. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I have the police on speed dial, I said. I have enough in this binder to put you away for 10 years, Dad. Minimum. Between the identity theft, the tax evasion, and the theft of a minor's funds, you are done. Stephen sank back into his chair. He looked suddenly old, defeated. The bluster evaporated, leaving a small, scared man. Abby, he wheezed, you wouldn't, I'm your father. And I'm a mother, I replied, and you messed with my cub. I turned to the room, the party eye. S over. Linda, Mark, get out. Sarah, you can stay if you want, but if you leave with them, don't ever call me again. Linda and the cousins didn't say a word. They shuffled out the door, heads down, desperate to distance themselves from the blast zone. Sarah stood there, shivering. She looked at Stephen, who was staring at the floor. Then she looked at me. I didn't know, she sobbed. Abby, I swear to God, I didn't know he took Ethan's money. I know, I said softly. Sarah took a deep breath. She grabbed her purse. She walked over to Stephen, looked at him one last time with pure disgust, and then walked to my side. "I'm coming with you," she said. We left him there, alone in the house he didn't own, with the drink he couldn't afford, staring at the evidence of his own destruction. The fallout was swift, brutal, and entirely necessary. I didn't call the police that night. I gave him 24 hours to surrender himself. To his credit, or perhaps just his desire to control the narrative one last time, Stephen turned himself in the next morning for fraud. His lawyer, realizing the sheer volume of evidence Marcus and I had compiled, advised him to plead guilty to avoid a drawn-out public trial that would have humiliated him even further. He is currently serving a 5-year sentence in a minimum security facility. I haven't visited him. I don't plan to. The Miller estate was liquidated. I sold the big house. It was full of bad memories and termites anyway. The proceeds from the sale went to paying off the debts he had racked up in my name and settling the tax liens. Sarah moved out of the condo. It was a hard adjustment for her. She had to get a job, a real one, working as a receptionist at a dental office. It wasn't glamorous, and she hated it at first. She had to move Bella from St. Jude's to the public school district. But a strange thing happened. Without the pressure of being the perfect granddaughter carrying the family legacy, Bella flourished. She made friends who liked her for who she was, not who her grandfather paid for her to be. She stopped being a miniature adult and started being a kid. Sarah and I are working on it. It's not perfect. There is a lot of history to unpack. But last Sunday, she came over for dinner. She brought a lasagna store-bought, but it's the thought that counts. We sat on my patio while the kids played in the yard. Bella was showing Ethan how to braid grass, and Ethan was explaining to her the aerodynamics of the paper airplane he had just built. "He's really smart, isn't he?" Sarah said, watching Ethan launch the plane. It glided perfectly, landing in the bird bath. "Yeah," I said, taking a sip of iced tea. "He is." "I'm sorry," Sarah said. She didn't look at me, she watched the kids. "For laughing, for all of it. I was so scared of Dad, I just wanted to be safe. I threw you under the bus to stay in the seat." "I know," I said, "but you're driving your own bus now." She smiled, a weak, tired but genuine smile. "I am, and thank you for getting the money back." That was the most important victory. When I sold Stephen's house, I used my portion of the equity to fully restore Ethan's trust fund. I put back every cent of the $15,000 plus interest. I called Ethan over later that evening, after Sarah and Bella had left. "Hey, bud," I said, patting the spot on the sofa next to me. He climbed up, clutching a new Lego set I had bought him, a complex Technic rover. "Did you have fun with Bella?" "Yeah," he said. "She's nice now. She doesn't talk about her grades anymore." "That's good," I said. "Ethan, do you remember what Grandpa said about you not making anything of yourself?" He stiffened slightly. "Yeah." "Well," I said, pulling him into a hug, "I need you to know that he was wrong. But just in case you ever doubt it, I secured your future. You have a college fund again, or a start-your-own robotics company fund. Whatever you want it to be, you have options, Ethan. You have a future." He looked up at me, his brown eyes wide and serious. "Because I'm a good investment." I laughed, hugging him tighter. "No, baby, because you're my son, and you are priceless." We sat there for a long time, listening to the crickets, the weight of the last 10 years finally lifting off my shoulders. I had lost a father, yes, but I had saved my son. And looking at the way he focused intently on the instructions for his new rover, building his world piece by piece, I knew I had made the trade of a lifetime. Stephen was right about one thing: legacy is important, but he was wrong about what it means. Legacy isn't a name on a building or a tuition receipt from a fancy school. Legacy is breaking the cycle. Legacy is protecting the people you love from the people who claim to love you. And sometimes, legacy is simply having the courage to walk away from the table when the joke is on you.